Today's lecture is on web servers. We're going to start with a little bit of review of what you did yesterday. I'm going to quiz you. I'm going to quiz you and see how well your understanding has carried over in your sleep. So, I remember reading that when you learn stuff, you only really have it sink in when you sleep. At this point in boot camp, are y'all getting nice 7 to 8 hours? Yeah, nice. Heads up though, try to sleep a bit. Try to eat. It's easy to fall into that developer lifestyle, the stereotypical Red Bull, Mountain Dew, and pizza lifestyle. Yeah, it's the dream. No, it's kind of funny when you go to a hackathon, for example, or any tech event. That's the food that they have. Be like, oh, there's free lunch. Sweet, what's the lunch? Well, it's Cheetos and Mountain Dew. And then you get a choice. You could either have cheese pizza or pepperoni pizza. There's a vegetarian option. But yeah, so legit, take care of yourselves. Especially because I'm going to lay down some heavy stuff on you. Right? And it's going to rock your world. It's going to shock you a little bit. When you see the absolute power that you're capable of with the internet. So you already started yesterday. You started exploring your newfound powers with a particular tool. A particular protocol. What was it called? What's that? HTTP. HTTP, and that's what we're going to explore right now. We're going to go notes, new.md. You're going to say, it is weak. Oh, also, how do you feel about the light theme? Would you like it dark or light? Because in that room, people like it light, but it's custom to your, is this visible? Okay. Is this better? No? Okay. All right, good. Thanks for telling me. Is this better? There we go. Look at that. See? We got choices. So I'm glad you told me that one was not good, because I've been using that one for 1.5 years now. So so thanks. Today is week 2, day 2. Web servers 101, right? With Express. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For today or for in general? So yesterday's was stuff on DNS and all that stuff? Yeah. I'll say knowing that it exists is enough. If it's something that really interests you, then you can dive deeper and deeper into it. But it's not the kind of thing that every web developer needs to have a full knowledge of, right? Over time I go oh, okay, I know what a DNS is, right? But you don't need to know how to use those different commands and all that stuff. That's more for learning purposes, right? Yeah, same with that's a really good point. Some of the stuff that I'm going to do in the first half of the lecture, right, it's at this point right now is not going to be stuff that you need to be able to do or even really fully understand. I'm going to use the first half of the lecture to show you one way to do things with a really basic tool. Basic in the sense of it's really weak, so you need to do a lot of stuff. And then in the second half of the lecture, I'll show you the tool that you'll be using for your project, which is a beefed up version of the thing that I used in the first half. Right? So again, when I start doing that stuff, I'll be very clear that in the first half, you don't need to write any of that code. Right? So today is week 2, day 2, web servers with Express. We're going to start with a little bit of review, because I want to make sure that y'all have solid fundamentals before I throw a bunch of scary stuff at you. This is not going to be scary. It's going to be a good time, but just want to make sure that y'all are good. So yesterday you learned HTTP. And what does HTTP mean? hypertext transfer protocol. Oh yeah, that is 2 steps. Yes, you're almost there. You're almost to 5. You're gonna get a sticker soon. So hypertext transfer protocol. Right. Another thing about HTTP is that it's an agreement between people. Right? A protocol is not like a real thing. It's not like a real thing that exists. It's an agreement between people to say, hey, this is how we're gonna communicate. Right? I don't like Travis did yesterday's lecture. I don't know if you would have done this example. If you maybe go out on like a date with somebody and it's terrible. It's so bad. Both of you are like not vibing. You like argue over something, right? Maybe like one of you is like way too polite and the other person's like a little rude. Like things are just not vibing at all. And then it's the next day and you're like, you know what? I'm going to send them a message. Hey, had a great time last night. We should totally hang out again, right? Right there, like you're going off that like social protocol, right? Like it's just agreed upon rules that like this is how we live our lives. Like, yo, stop. And then that person doesn't message you back. They just don't message you back. So you're like, hey, I said we should do that again, right? And they don't message you back, and you're like, hey, but I'm nice though, right? Like we should hang out. I had a good time. Like you're veering further and further off of protocol, right? HTTP is going to be about making a request and then receiving a response. That's the protocol that we get with HTTP is one person makes a request and the other person sends back a response. And that's how HTTP is going to work. It's just an agreement that all the web developers who make web stuff, they say, hey, let's write a document. Let's write a document where we all agree that this is how our machines are going to communicate. We're going to declare that one of them is called a server and the other one's called a client. Right? That's just something we're going to decide. And the server is going to be listening and the client's going to be the one who has the ability to say stuff. Right? Ask for things. That's just how we've decided to model our stuff. So the client can say, hey, get me all of the dogs. And the server says, here are all the dogs. Right? Most things you're going to do in web development will have to deal with something like this, where you have somebody that has some data and somebody that wants that data. Right? And the person who wants that data with HTTP has the ability to ask for it and get responses back. Now, HTTP is built up through like a couple different structures of how the request and the response are actually going to be formatted. Right? So I want to hear if y'all can tell me what a request might look like. Well, what might a request look like from a client? Yeah, I might want to get something, right? So generally it'll be get or any other verb of the HTTP verbs, which are put, post, and delete. There's a bunch of other ones, but we don't care about them right now. Get, put, post, delete, those are going to be the ones that we care about right now. And then that method is going to be made to something. Right? Something is going to mean like some path. You know? Some path somewhere. Slash, 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 slash. So it might be, for example, slash dogs. Right? Maybe it's get slash dogs. Right? Maybe it's delete slash posts. Right? Where I'm going to be talking about some resource that I want to interact with. Now, this thing here you're going to explore tomorrow. There's a whole lecture on basically making these actions on stuff. But I want you to know that generally a request is going to be made up of some verb or method. I call them verbs, but methods tends to be what people call them. And then some path. there might also be, optionally, some data. Right? Chances are if I'm creating a new dog, for example, post dogs, right, I might want to give some data to create that dog with. Now, we'll explore again what this looks like tomorrow, but for the purposes of right now, I want you to know that a request is going to have a method, a path, and optionally some data. This thing here, the combination of get or whatever, any of these methods, plus a path, method plus path is route. Right? I'm going to start using the word route today. And I want you to know that route is going to mean, again, the combination of a method and a path. So get/dogs is going to be different than post/dogs. Right? Those are going to be two different routes. Okay. Now, what would a response look like? Oops. What's that? Do you see that? Right, so it might be some JSON stuff. Right? There may be some JSON stuff in there, but a response in HTTP actually has a very strict kind of, it's got a code. Right? So a response looks like maybe 200, right? Or 404, or 500, right? 401, whatever. There's all these different numbers and they mean something, right? A status code. If I ask, hey, can you get me all the dogs? The server in HTTP is going to say absolutely, right? Or it might say no, right? It's going to say something about whether or not it can do that. Right? So that's what the status code is going to mean. Whether the server was actually able to do the thing that you asked for. Right? There's no reason to memorize all of the status codes. There's a billion of them. There's a HTTP kittens, HTTP cats. There's a website where you can see what each one of the HTTP status codes does. So this is 100. Let's continue. HTTP 201 created, accepted. My favorite is okay. just okay. So if you ever forget what they mean, it's partial content. There's one in here. Oh, method not allowed. This one's pretty. 418 is really good. 418, I'm a teapot. Yeah, that's a good question. Right? So, 418, I'm a teapot. On the MDN. Yeah. So, hypertext coffee pot control protocol was basically like a joke added to HTTP. It's valid HTTP. It's if you have a coffee pot that's controlled by what do you call it? Controlled via HTTP, like a Internet of Things coffee pot. If you try to make a request to it to make coffee, but it's actually a teapot, and teapots can't make coffee, then it'll reply with 418. I'm a teapot. I can't I can't make coffee. So, and it's on the MDN. 418. I'm a teapot. The 418 I'm a teapot client error response indicates that the server refuses to brew coffee because it is a teapot. It's fair enough. Let's check out the specifications here in the RFC 2324 section 2.3.2. And here's this big document explaining how a robust quality of service is required between the coffee pot user and the coffee pot service. So it's this old, April Fool's joke. But the reason I bring this up isn't just to joke around about old memes. I mean, that's always fun and all. But this is more about the fact that HTTP is really just a series of agreements about how we're gonna make our machines communicate to each other. Because in theory, like the way that machines are connected to each other is they have like a wire, and technically they can always scream at each other. They could just constantly be like, "bah!" on both sides, and nothing would get done. Nothing would get done. It's like if you go to a burger place, or you go to the bank and you just walk in and you're like, and you like start yelling and people are yelling back at you and I want a burger. Just give me 20. What? Who wants a burger? Like what? It's pandemonium. So instead we agree that one person's just going to nicely listen and everybody else is going to stand in line and ask questions and get the responses and move on. Right? That's the problem that we're solving with HTTP. If you want to come up with another protocol, then that's cool. Right? In fact, there are other ones. Right? There are other protocols that you'll explore over the course of the bootcamp. Right? So our response, taking it back to this, our response is generally going to be a status code and also some data. Right? Again, optionally some data, which might be JSON stuff. What else might that data be? What's that? Sure, there may be like error messages. What else? Maybe an image. I might be asking a server, hey, can I have this image? Right? I might be asking the server, hey, can I have this HTML web page? Right? I might be asking the server, like, hey, can I have some XML or whatever, just some data. Right? Just general, just text. Right? Anything. HTTP is just a method for me to ask the server to do something and hopefully give me something back. So yesterday you used HTTP. Were you the client or were you the server? You were the client, right? Yesterday what you were doing is you were asking somebody for stuff. Right? Today we're going to flip it. You're going to be the server. You're going to start building up a server that listens for things and then does stuff when it's asked. Okay. A little bit more of vocab here. HTTP is a blank, 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 blank based protocol. All right. There's way too many blanks, so I'm going to give you an R. It's an R-based protocol. What could the R stand for? Sure, it could stand maybe for request. Absolutely. Read, maybe. Route. That's a good one. Response, sure. I'm gonna do a resource-based protocol. Right. So all of these are great. Read, I'm actually not sure exactly what you mean. No. Oh yeah, sweet. Read, write, delete. I'm gonna say do actions on data. Right? Read, write, delete. That's what you mean. Cool. That's actually what you can explore tomorrow. Right? The stuff that you want to do. I'm gonna put a word in. It's called the CRUD actions. Did Travis talk about CRUD yesterday? Right. So CRUD is gonna stand for create, read, update, and destroy. They're the things that you usually want to do with data. Right? So yeah, HTTP, you could totally do the CRUD actions. It's built up of making requests, responses. There's routes. R is a particularly bad letter for this because what I'm looking for is resource, but it technically works for all of these. So it's a resource-based protocol, and what I mean by resource, I mean like get away from thinking about asking a server for a particular page, right? Like just a particular page. What we're really asking for, we're going to ask our servers for is, we're asking for a thing or a collection of things, right? I might be asking for a dog, and the server might return to me some JSON that shows me the dog, or it might return to me like a HTML page that has that dog on it, Right? I might be asking for all the dogs. And the server might return, again, JSON that shows me like the text describing every dog, or it might return me a page that shows me icons of each of the dogs. Right? So we want to start thinking about things that we ask for with HTTP. HTTP is a stateless protocol. Stateless. What does that mean? Can you explain that a little bit more? Yeah? Is you the client or the server? So client. So I don't know if I fully understand, but like I think it's close to what I'm looking for is that the server doesn't remember stuff. Is that what you mean? Yeah, so the server doesn't remember things. Right? The client makes a request. Once that request is over, the server is just like, I don't know who this is. I've never seen this person in my life. Right? Every single time that the server gets a request, it's new phone who dis. Like that's every single time. So every time somebody makes a request, they need to say, hey, heads up, remember me? Like I'm Nima, please. Like please. And the reason I mentioned that, so I'll just say the server won't remember who it's talking to. For example, say I am Nima and I want to get my friends. Right? Like maybe this is Facebook. I might make a request like get/friends. But there's nothing in here. There's nothing in here that says get the friends of Nima. Right? There's nothing in there that says get friends of Nima. So there's got to be some way for me to say, hey, I am Nima. I want my friends. Right? Maybe once I get my friends, right, like somehow I get it over to the server that it's Nima. I want Nima's friends. And then I say, okay, now that you know I'm Nima, get me my posts. Right? And the server is going to be like, I don't know who you are. Right? Again, it's like its memory will have been wiped. So what you're going to explore over the course of this week is how do you make the server remember who it's talking to? Right? HTTP by default just doesn't remember. So we're going to need to figure out some way to do that. Okay. So with this in mind, we've got HTTP as a resource-based protocol. HTTP is a stateless protocol. HTTP is built off of requests and responses. What we're going to do in a second is we're going to hop into actually making a server. So again, with the GitHub downloader project, it was HTTP requests to a what we call a black box. It's a thing that you don't see on the inside. Right? It's dark. Put stuff in, stuff comes out. Right? So you were asking GitHub, hey, can I have the contributors? You don't know what the code on the GitHub side looks like. You just ask it nicely. Right? So with HTTP, we've got this client that can make requests to basically like a big wall. And then stuff happens here, but we don't see it. Like stuff happens on that side, but we don't see it. And then we end up getting back like the data coming back. So right, the data ends up coming back. So we're going to hop over on this side of things. This side of things is called back-end development. Right? This over here generally is going to be called front end when we're talking about web stuff. Right? This is technically going to be where all the pretty stuff happens. All the like the nice part of the website. And this part here is the database, the routing, the back end stuff. What do you call it when somebody does all of it? Full stack, right? So that's what we're going to do with this bootcamp is we're going to do all of it. Okay, so I am going to hop into making a little demo here. So I'm going to make a new folder. And this new folder is going to be called cool HTTP. Just because I already have one called Express Server and HTTP Server. So cool HTTP. And what I'm going to do is in my terminal, I know this isn't very visible yet, but hang in there. In my terminal, I'm going to go into cool HTTP. And what's the first thing I do when I want to start a new NPM project? Yeah, NPM init. Do you know what -y does? Yeah, npm -y is just like, just say yes to everything. Just give me everything. So now I have this package JSON. I am going to go ahead and make a file that I'll call, you can call this anything. I've called mine server.js. Oof. Server.js. And this is what's in server.js right now. Right? Nothing. Good old nothing. And I run this, and nothing happens. Great. Nothing happens. I start off all my things with console.log. Hey, you know who it is. Just to see if something happens. I'm like, all right, I'm actually running the correct file. We're in business. Now, what I need to do is start listening for requests. I'm going to try and build a system. I'm going to just try and build a program that listens to HTTP requests. And when it gets an HTTP request, eventually it'll just say, cool. Like it'll reply back with like, good job, or okay, or something like that. So it needs to start listening for requests, and then when you get a request, send back, cool. Just send back some text. Is that visible at all for you? Yeah? Okay, stop me anytime if you can't read this stuff. So I'm going to need a module, the var HTTP module. You worked with HTTPS. This is just a similar one. Require HTTP. It's very similar. It's just not got an S on it. Right? HTTPS is secure. HTTP is not secure. Right? Then I run my script and nothing happens, which is good. I might have expected there to be a problem. Like if I wrote this thing wrong and I run it, I get an error. It says I can't find that module. But mine, HTTP, this thing works fine, which is good. First thing I like to do after I bring in a module is console.log HTTP. Let's see what that is. Let's open that up. Wow. Oh man, so much stuff. Look at all this. Do you recognize these? What are these? Status codes, right? What? You recognize these? What is that? It's a method. You want methods? We got methods. I know this is make column or something, but I read this as okay, cool. Like, hey server, how you doing? Okay, cool. So look, there's all these different ones. We don't care about all of them. We just care about put, post, create. Put, post, delete, and get. For right now. Where's get? There's get. Right. So I make my way a little bit further down. So we got some methods. We got some status codes. Check it out. 418, I'm a teapot. It's everywhere. It's standard HTTP. I've got this agent, this client request. What else do I have in here? Outgoing message, server. And in here is a create server function. Right? I might not know how to use this right now, but I see that there's a create server function somewhere inside of this HTTP module. So the HTTP module is just a bunch of stuff that's useful for doing HTTP stuff. You used the HTTPS version of it yesterday for getting data. I'm going to be using HTTP now to create a server, and I can reach into it. I can go var server equals http.create server. That's the thing I'm legally allowed to do. But it's a function, so what do I do? If I run a function, like I want to run create server, what's that? Brackets, right? I need these parentheses here, right? Absolutely. So if I go console.log server right now, without having run it, what I get is the fact that create server is a function. Right? Cool. So I want to actually create my server. I'm going to run this now and actually get something back. It didn't break on me. It didn't break on me. So I was able to run HTTP create server like this. We'll do something else. I'm going to tell the server to start listening for requests. Server.listen. All right, so make a server. Make server. I'm going to get rid of the console log here. And I'll tell the server to start listening. It's listening. Right? It's there. The server is inside the house. Right? It's listening. I'm not in my terminal anymore. Like I can't ls, I can't cd. Right? The program just hangs and it waits. And it waits and it waits. Now, I'll tell you, the server is listening. But it's hard for us to see that the server is listening anywhere. So what the HTTP module lets us do is it lets us pass a callback here to run when we start listening. Right? I can pass in, let me go function. I can pass in a callback and just say console.log, I am listening. And when I run this now, when the server starts running, it says, I am listening. Right? But it only does that once it actually starts listening. The other thing that I might want to do is say a particular port. Your machine has lots of little like windows that programs can like sit at and listen. And every little window, like there's tons of them, there's thousands of them. You just need to register a window for your program. Right? So I'm going to say that my program here is going to listen on port 1337. Right? Just the number 1337. You can pick any number. And I run this now. I might even say I am listening on, and just because I don't want to write this here, I'm going to go var port equals, I'll make it capital so it's angry, port equals 1337. This is going to say port, and this is going to say I am listening on port. Cool? Your machine just opens up most of them for you. There are some ports that are already being used by different parts of, like different programs on your machine. But the thing is, like, you could technically try to run anywhere, right? And if somebody wants to talk to me, they need to know what port I'm on, right? So right now I'm listening on port 1337. If I go to my browser and I go to localhost / 7654, not slash, but colon, sorry. Localhost / 7654. Localhost is going to mean my machine. Colon is going to mean I'm defining what port I want to listen on, and this is the port. So I do this now, and it says, hey, the site can't be reached because there's nobody there. Right? There's nobody at that port. But if I run at 1337, notice this. Oh, no, stop. Ah! Okay, do you see that? What does that mean? It means it's trying to connect with somebody, right? It means maybe it found a connection, but it didn't actually get a response back. It's like when if I'm like right here, I'm like, hey, how you doing? And you're like, right? I'm like, all right. It's like in I don't know if y'all play, like RPGs or whatever, where people go like, ah, all right, like they don't actually say anything. You're just waiting. Again, notice if I go to 3000, it immediately stops. Or not 3000, sorry, 7654. All right, 7654 is immediately stopped, but 1337 is just waiting. Because there is a connection happening. I just need to be able to say now, hey, listen, I've done the request. What's the second half of an HTTP transaction? I need to say what the response should be, right? So in my server, HTTP create server here thing, I can write a function. I can write a function that says, hey, when you're given a request and when you're given a response, right? So the HTTP create server is going to receive the request that's incoming, and it also will give you, as a programmer, a half-baked response, right? It's just a half-baked response, and I can add stuff to it. I can do things with it. For example, just at the moment, I'm just going to console log request, but I'll do something with the response in a second. When I save this right now, and I restart my server, now I can try to go to 1337 again, see that it's still hanging because I'm not sending back a response. But when I check my terminal, a bunch of stuff is printed out. A bunch of stuff. And among these, there's the URL and the method from which the request came from. What kind of thing am I looking at here? Is it though? Yeah, it's an incoming message, but what kind of JavaScript thing is this? It's an object, right? Request is an object. So I could go, give me the request URL and give me the request method. That's legal, right? The request is just an object. So if I do that, I stop my server and I restart it. Now when I refresh this thing, I get /get, right? Maybe I want to get these things on actually the opposite side just because it looks better this way. It'll say get / now in a second. There you go, get /. And I want you to see now that if I try to make a request to /Kanye, already there, right? I get /Kanye, right? So my server's listening to any request that comes through localhost 1337, regardless of what I write in here. Kanye albums graduation. Kanye albums graduation. It's all in there. Right? What kind of JavaScript thing do you think this might be? It's a string. It could be a string. And I could even go, hey, give me the type of request method and give me the type of request URL. And when I restart my server now and I make a request, I'm going to get string, right? Both of them are strings. So all the things that you can usually do with strings, we can do now. Now, I said that I get this request, I get this response, I get this regardless of what kind of method I get. If I open up, now you've already seen curl yesterday, right? Did you like curl? Meh. It takes a lot of writing. I don't like it personally. I use a tool called Postman. Postman, spelled like Postman, is basically curl but with a user interface. So say I want to make a GET request to localhost 1337 / so dude. When I go enter now or press the sending button, now this thing actually makes that request. Okay, so let me just stop that. Send, and I got get so dude. And among the things that I can do is, say I want to do a delete request. Let me just restart the server. If I do a delete to localhost 1337 sawdude, I can go send, and now I get, delete sawdude. So Postman's just like a better curl. It'll let you set these things, and it's good for testing stuff. So I want to send this response. No, not send. Response.end. And you see what happens is when my server is running now, again, notice I have to stop and restart my server every time I make a change. Right? My server is running now, I refresh, right? And the page immediately is okay. And if I want to, I'm actually able to go end and then go, hey, some text. I restart my server. Got the tiniest little A. Teeny A. There you go. A. Kind of like, A. Just a little bit of text. So here I am, essentially listening and then responding to every request. Every request. So here's a delete request, and I got A back. You know, what'd be neat is if I sent back maybe an H1, and I restart my server, and I refresh this thing, and what? Got some HTML rendered. And immediately my mind starts racing. I'm like, oh, what if I do a full-on HTML page just in here, HTML, and then I go, okay, head, and then I don't put anything in the head, but I do body, and then in the body I go an H1 that says, welcome to my page. And then I end my H1, and then I'm like, oh, let's do an H2. Enjoy. And then look at that. I am web developer. What? I restart my thing, refresh. What? My H1s, H2s, I could build anything. I could build anything. This string is your world. Right? It's the most powerful tool in the world. You can build absolutely. You want an A tag? href. Href to, we'll do http google.com. Right? You want links? There we go. We got links. And I go ahead and I refresh this thing again. And you want links? Like, we got links. Can we agree that this is like, if I told you this is what you were going to do for the rest of the boot camp, would you all like get up and leave? Right? If this was how I was supposed to be writing websites, right? You want to put it in a JavaScript script, and then in here just go alert, hello. But I'll do it with there you go, alert, hello. And now when I load up the page, like anything is possible. Look at that, we got some JavaScript, right? Some front-end JavaScript. I'm not trying to flex on you. I'm trying to show you that like anything can technically be compressed into a string and sent across the wire. And your browser, when it receives this string, right? When it receives this string, it will interpret it and do something with it. But this is horrific. I might want to, for example, every time I go on a page here, if I go on Kanye album's graduation, it shows me this page. But when I go to Drake album's graduation, like there's no Drake album called graduation. So it should give me a different thing. It should be like, hey, there is no page. Right? Or maybe it'll show me like some usual content, but then a little message that says, I don't think you're looking for the right album. Right? So I might want to construct this string over time. Right? I might want to come up with how to build this string up. Now I could do this by using variables and stuff, like in here, instead of enjoy, this might be plus request.method, or request. We'll do URL to see the URL that I'm making a request to. Right? So I'm building this gigantic string up bit by bit. And if I restart my server, now when I go here and I get Drake albums graduation, and if I go Kanye albums Yeezus, I get my script that was going off, and then I get Kanye albums Yeezus. So the idea is that I would like to be able to construct a response using some of the stuff that came in, right? Maybe deciding what page to show, right? Doing that kind of stuff. So conceptually, does this make sense? I really want to stress that you're not going to be writing code like this, right? You're not going to be writing your HTML pages like this. Instead, maybe I might make an HTML file somewhere and load it. Right? You're also not going to be using the HTTP server. You're going to be using something else that's built on top of this. Right? So I'm going to set myself a couple goals here. First of all, I want to show you, I forgot to show you this, that in the request that comes through, you also get headers. Right? So if I console log request.headers, just like I console log request method, request URLs, I can see things like my headers, like whatever pragma means, right? Some cookie information, which you will learn about Thursday. You'll learn about tomorrow while you're doing the assignments, and then there's a lecture on Thursday for it. Right? So there's headers. Did Travis talk about headers yesterday? Right? Headers are extra information that gets passed with a request. I know I didn't put them in my anatomy of a request before, but they're in there. So I'll set myself a couple goals. First of all, what I want to do is send back a particular status code. Right? I can set a status code in the response by going response.statuscode, and I can set it to anything. 418, I'm a teapot. Right? By default, whenever you make a request, the status that comes back is 200 OK. But now that I've set my status code to 418, I'm a teapot, whenever I make a request, what I got back is 418, I'm a teapot. Right? But you can do anything. 401, go for it. 404, it's up to you. Right? The other goal that I want to set myself for here is I want to be able to show different things depending on the request. For example, if request.url is /Kanye, then this is what I want to send back. Then response.end with I miss the old Kanye. Right, and then a response status code of I wonder if I can do a string. Easy. We'll see. Actually, I really do want to see if that works. So I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna restart, make a request to /Kanye. No, I guess not. Looks like yeah, invalid status code. Okay, fair enough. We'll do the status code is just gonna be 200. Else, I might want to response.end with why would you want to see any other page? And response.status code, maybe 404, because I don't have any other pages on my thing. So now the thing is, when my server starts, if I make a request to just /Kanye, I get my welcome to my page, I miss the old Kanye. But if I make a request to anything else, like do Chades, we'll do Drake again, and I get, why would you want to see any other page, right? And now I technically have a website. That responds to the requests dynamically, right? Deciding what to show you, right? I might have continued doing that. Like, I know I just took out that request URL part up here, but I could still keep that in there technically if I wanted to. I could even, depending on the method, if request dot method equals get, then do something else, do something else. Like, that's totally legal for me. And say, oh, if the request method is get, then return that. But if the request method is post or anything else, it should say maybe 401, like you're not allowed to, the 401 is like forbidden. And then my response might say, no, you cannot. Right? So now I have an if statement that wraps around all the Kanye stuff, and then the else wraps around everything else. And for Kanye, I might have different things for whether you want to get Kanye or post or delete Kanye. When I start this now, I have all kinds of funky stuff. I try to get Kanye, and I get this page. So anytime you write something in the URL, that's a get request. Right? Up here, it can only be get requests. But if I go into my Postman stuff, then I say go to put Kanye, and I send, and I get back, no, you cannot. Right? You are web developers now. This is huge. Like, you can build absolutely anything. Anything. I mean, say you learned about reading from files before. You remember, like, the file IO thing? Technically, say I had a file var song lyrics. I could read from the file and put it here. Maybe I wanted to write to the file. You now have fs write file, and you can write to it to save stuff if you wanted to. You can technically build any website. So, last thing that I'm going to do is, first I'm going to ask if there's questions. Are there questions? Well, this all like makes sense? Yes.
Just on the port again.
Mm-hmm.
So is it only for local that you would set whatever? Or
No, that's a great question. So you're asking because, like, when you go to Google, you don't have to say google.com port something, right? Yeah, so what they have is, when you have like a domain name, the domain name will be tied to a particular port, right? So you don't need to write the port. Usually stuff runs on port 80. Yeah, port 80. You'll be running a lot of stuff on port like 8080 or 8000 just because they're easy numbers to write. But 80 is like the default port for like servers. Like the Apache server goes on 80 by default. So if you were to write localhost, like, it tries to go to port 80 by default. I don't have anything running on 80, and I can't remember off the top of my head if Node actually gets access to that port. Sweet, yeah. So if you put it on port 80, you can just go localhost. But any other port, like, you would put the name of it. Exactly, yeah, because your firewall might like allow communication through certain ports and not allow communication through others, right? Generally, when you're developing, like, you'll pick a port for your thing. You'll pick some random thing so that it doesn't clash with other systems that might be running on your machine. I mean, there's literally thousands of them that you could pick from. So it's like, oh, if 1337 doesn't work, well, then let's do 1338, right? You'll find one. But if... Mm-hmm. It would like when you try to start your system, like say here, I have this one running on port. We'll say that this one's running on port 1337. So this is running on port 1337, and say I go to my oh, I'm actually in there. Say I go to that terminal again, but in a different, or to that file again, but in a different terminal, and I try to run node server, it'll crash because it says, hey, there's an error, that address is in use, right? So it won't even be able to spin up, right? So then I'd say, oh, okay, well, this next time now that I want to run it, I'll run it on 1338. And now I have two running, one on 1337 and one on 1338. Makes sense? Good stuff. And whoop out. So I'll put it back on 1337. So this 10, I think the last thing that I want to do for you here is show you basically that I can take any text, like any kind of response, and send that back. So say I want to send back a JSON, like you'd mentioned in the beginning, JSON, I can go, maybe I'll say whenever you make a request to something that's not Kanye, response dot set header. And what I can use in the response headers is tell the browser or tell the client what kind of data I'm sending back, right? I could say, hey, the content type of what I'm sending you right now is application JSON, right? And this means that whatever you get back right now, read it as JSON. And then the stuff that I end up sending back, instead of response.end, why would you want to see any other page? I might take an object and go message, why would you want to see any other page? Now, if I said that with response.end, I can only send back strings, what kind of thing is this? It's an object, so what am I going to have to do? What's that? Well, actually the opposite. So parsing is when you go from string to object. I'm going to have to stringify it. I'm going to have to take this object and go, hey, json.stringify, right? So that my response just sends a string. Often when I'm writing this out like this, it's just hard for me to see, so I'll do it out here and I'll say var JSON string so that I can respond with the JSON string like that. All right, make sense? And now when I restart this, if I made a request to literally anything else, I would end up getting back, an error. Oh, because I'm not on the right port. Localhost 1337. Boop. I got back a JSON string that says, why would you want to see any other message? Right? So I could technically send back JSON. And in the same way that I can say I send back JSON, I can also say, I want to send back an HTML page. Right? Again, you don't need to memorize any of this stuff, the set header, the content type, and whatever, because the tool that we're going to use is going to do all of this stuff automatically for us. I just want you to see what's going on underneath. Right? So I might say, hey, text HTML is what I'm sending you, and instead of taking this whole string here, I might want to say, send back the Kanye page. Now, there's no such thing as Kanye page right now. There's just no such thing. But what I can do is load up the Kanye page. Kanye page is maybe going to be f read file. I want to read from Kanye page.html, which means I'm going to have to go var fs equals require fs. Again, there's no Kanye page HTML, so I'm just going to have to go ahead and make it Kanye page.html, paste all my HTML code in here, Right? I know I didn't put any indentation in it, but it's technically an HTML page. Good? And now my server can say, hey, when you load up the Kanye page, right? Load up the Kanye page, and then with the response, send back the actual page so that I don't get all that code written in here. FS. Always get the... Oh, it's a capital Y. Good catch. Now, when I load this up on Kanye, I get the page, right? So we can start having many pages, move them in different places, use ifs and elses to structure our logic of what the backend's going to do. All that stuff can work, right? Any questions? Your pieces like falling into place. You see like why we're looking at this stuff, right? Cool. So I want to just really quickly connect this to what you did last week, right? Notice I didn't talk about for loops. I didn't make a big deal about the if statements. I didn't make a huge deal about working with objects. I didn't even make a huge deal about working with callbacks, right? Because those are like the fundamental principles that then we use to build this stuff, right? You're going to get to a place where you don't think twice about making an if statement, right? Where you don't think twice about having to pass in a callback, right? If you're not there yet, like that's cool. It's just going to take a little bit of time, right? But I want you to see that like this is the goal of where we're heading towards, right? Where your callbacks like actually have a purpose, and that purpose is, hey, can you create a server and then do this? Hey, can you start listening and then do this? Does this example, or does this feel a little bit more concrete than what you did on Thursday, right? For like why we would need callbacks. Cool. So just continue thinking about that. And if there are concepts from last week that still aren't sinking in, just come grab us, and we'll show you like concretely in the web dev stuff that you're doing, because you've started web dev now, right? We'll show you how what you're doing actually connects to what you did last week. Good? Cool. So we'll take a 10-minute break at, let's go 10:17. We'll pick up again, and I'll show you the next tool that wraps around this. Thanks, y'all. Yeah. How many times do I have to tell you I can't pause Halo? Welcome back to Quake Champions. um, six out of 10 though. Quake Live is great though, right? Yeah, Quake Live 9 out of 10. Because it's literally just old Quake, but yeah. The thing I love about those games is like they run really well. They run really well. It's kind of nuts to see what goes into like game development. If you look up fast inverse square root, okay, so fast inverse square root is you know the square root of a number. If I want to do the inverse of that, that operation is just not light. It's not like an easy operation to do. And in graphics, you might have to do the inverse of the square root to calculate like lighting. And you need to do that really, really quickly because it has to happen like on every frame. So if like that's what slows down stuff is like those computations. So when they were building up Quake, so this is Open Arena, but it's similar. When they're building up Quake, like there's all these like reflections and stuff that need to be calculated really quickly, and the game is fast. So find out the reciprocal. There's this algorithm. This algorithm called fast inverse square root. Now, I don't think it's fully known who discovered it. Basically, we're trying to calculate all these arrows to see where light reflects. But here is the original code that was used to implement fast inverse square root in a video game called Quake 3 Arena. Right. So with the exact original commented text by the writer. So heads up, language warning. So this is the code. So the code doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. And then if you read the comments, that's John Carmack. Yeah, John Carmack, the like one of the programmers for Quake 3. Yeah. This algorithm doesn't like actually make any sense. That uses this hexadecimal number that somehow works. You're like, what? Okay. All right. So in case you ever feel like you don't understand what you're doing, even the biggest and the best of the not the web devs, of the programmers, John Carmack, even they don't understand what's going on sometimes. Right. So that being said, what we had ended off with was working with the HTTP server. We had made ourselves like a nice dynamic page that would load up different data based on the kind of requests that we were making. And cool stuff. We even played around with returning JSON and HTML. Right? I could return images if I wanted to. Now, can we agree that building a website like this would be tough? Right? Especially because I would like to have a way for me to say, hey, if we have this idea of like routes, why can't I just say something like, okay, when you make a GET request to /dogs, return all the dogs. Right? When you make a GET request to /Kanye, show the Kanye page. So that might be HTML, and this one here might be JSON. Like I want to be able to write this stuff out like line by line like this, as if I'm like listing off things. Right? Maybe when you make a GET request to artist, like some artist, I just use the colon to say like, imagine there was an artist here. Maybe show that artist's page, HTML. Like maybe I want this thing to be dynamic, right? And I'm going off of the idea of like, I wish I could do this. I wish I could just declare these routes. So in theory, I could technically write some code that wraps around this thing And you now have the skills to start working on this, to wrap around this thing and take some code that maybe looks like something like get slash Kanye, and this is going to be some JavaScript. Get slash Kanye should like do something. Right. Or post slash dogs should also do something else. I want to be able to maybe write code like this because it's more legible. Right? This is being able to declare routes like this just feels way more legible than having this mess of if-else conditions. Right? So I know that like given a week, you'd be able to translate from this code to this code with a function. Right? You'd be able to do that. Maybe 2 weeks. So somebody has already done that for us. Right? Somebody's done that for us. It's called Express. Express, it's the fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. Express, it makes minimal web application framework. It's got all kinds of things. We're going to use it first and foremost for making nice routes. I'm going to go into my terminal. I'm going to leave this cool HTTP project, and I'm going to go in and go cool express. Oh, whoops. RM cool express, because it's supposed to be mkdir cool express. So when I go into that cool express thing again, I need to npm init-y. Okay. And then the first thing that express tells me is I can take Express and install it as an npm module. So if I go into my cool Express file right now, it just looks like this. Right, and it's working properly. I'm going to npm install Express. Give it a second. And when I check my package JSON now, Express is in there. All right, so Travis showed you on Friday how when you npm install stuff, it gets added to your package JSON. And now what I can do is I could go var express equals require express if I really wanted to, and I could console log what express is. So you go node server.js, and I get out a big thing. Right? And again, I could explore this just like we did with the HTTP module. Right? But in the interest of time, I'm just going to show you that when I want to get started, on the Express page, I always go to getting started. Whoops. Oh no, they changed the page on me. Oh, damn these people. All right, so it used to be that you could go getting started and then there would be a drop down that says hello world. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to go to the guide. Yeah, we're going to go to the guide. Hey, why would they do that? All right, nice, good catch. All right, so this is what I was looking for. Just a minimal example that I'm just going to paste in at the moment. Minimum example that I'm going to paste in at the moment. I know these say const. I'm going to change them to var. This here, I'm going to just change it to ignore what the code does at the moment or the changes that I'm making to it. And wow, okay. So here's some code. I'm just going to go ahead and run it. And it hangs. It hangs just like the other one did. Right? That's all I need to know right now. if I go and check to see what the code is doing, it says bring an express. Use the express function to create a new app. Right? So I might have many apps. Right? But in this case here, my file only has one app. So create a new app. Our port is 3000, and this says when someone makes a get / request, right, respond with hello world. And then this one here says start listening. Some parts of this actually look really similar to what we had before. For example, this thing here looks identical. Right? This here is very similar to the create server, except notice that create server took a bunch of stuff in a callback. This one doesn't. Right? So this is similar to create server, but cleaner. We didn't put a callback in. And the reason we didn't put a callback in there because here the callback was used to say what you should do with every request and response. Whereas with Express, I get to pull that stuff out and say, hey, to the app, when somebody makes a get, this is what you do. Right? And see, this is very similar to the thing that I was writing as my dream code. Right? I'm saying when somebody makes a get request to / send back hello world. Now, what we had before was res.end. This is going to be res.send. Now, I forgot to mention, over in the cool HTTP thing, I was writing request and response in the callback. You can write Humpty and Dumpty. That's not how you write dump. Is that Humpty Dump? You know what I mean. Like you could write anything in there. Convention, so same here, like this could be request response, as long as you are consistent. But the convention is either request, response, or rec and res. I would recommend right now to stick to request and response. Because the thing is, rec and res are just so similar, the chances are you'll make a typo. And the thing is, rec and res are technically two very different objects. Right? So request and response is just a little bit easier to not make a mistake with. So I'm saying when you get a get / send back a response that says hello world. And I start this up again. And I go to localhost. What port was this running on? 3000. Localhost 3000. And I got hello world. Right? If I made a get request to anything else, I don't get anything back. In fact, it says cannot get. And if I made a post request somewhere, like say I make a post request to 3000, I get back error cannot post. Right? But my get / my get works fine. Right? So now I can start making all the same stuff that I did before, but it's going to be so much cleaner. What we've done here is we've declared a route. As opposed to putting in the instructions for what should happen when you get this thing, if this, do this, and being very descriptive and like really having to walk somebody through the problem, we're just saying, hey, listen, when somebody makes an app get, this is what you do. Right? If I wanted to make a post / route, what would I do? App.post / and then function request response, and then do whatever you want in here. So console. I could respond response.send. You made a post request. When I restart my server again, oops, I've got a / in there. I'm gonna make my server restart again, and I make a post request to localhost 3000, I get, you made a post request. Right? This is so much nicer than having to work with this mess. So I'm going to start declaring a couple different routes. I want to declare, so I might go, okay, when you get a slash request, respond with hello world. And I might say, when you get slash animals, I want you to, actually, let me leave this up here like that. App.get slash animals function request response. Maybe I want to send back a list of all of the animals, if there were any. We could go up here and say var animals equals dog, cat, horse, and cheetah. Cheetah. Yes. Yeah? H. Okay. I want to be able to send that stuff back, maybe as JSON. Right? So send JSON back. What I had to do before was I had to say set the what do you call it, the content type to JSON, and I needed to do that stringify. Right? So remember, parse is when I go from string to object. Stringify is when I go from object to string. So I needed to do the stringify, but one of the things that Express gives me is a function called JSON that I can just put animals into. And this is basically a combination of set content type, stringify, and send. Right? Or end. Right? So in Express, we've got send. We've got JSON. So I restart this right now, and I go, get me animals. I get dog, cat, horse, cheetah. Easy. I didn't even have to think about it really beyond just knowing it. Right? If I didn't know how to do this, I would Google how to send JSON with Express. Right? Proper way to return JSON using Node or Express, and I could look into this, and this person says, just use. So this is for Node, where we did the stringify and the content type. But if you go down and they're like Express, you can just go res.json. Ignore this thing here. we'll go res.json, and you can pass in whatever. So maybe I send back some JSON. Maybe I want to do all kinds of funky stuff, like be able to listen for a particular route. So a particular dynamic route. For example, I might want, if my animals look like, this would be maybe name, dog. Yeah, we'll do name, dog, and description. Cool. And then sound, woof. And I might have like a bunch of these, so we'll just do 3. We'll do cat, meow, and horse, neigh. And I don't really like horses. I really don't. They're weird. Like, they're weird animals, and I refuse to accept that anybody actually likes horses. Cats, I like some cats. Right? Dogs are cool. Right? I might even throw in, just want to see if I can throw in an emoji dog. Whoop. Cool. So maybe some. It's a control command space on a Mac. Yeah, it's control command space. So if I go emoji, and emojis are valid strings, so it's like It's fine for this. Horse is, let's get a little horse there. All right, so when I check out my animals right now, they have all that data. Whoops. No, it doesn't like, oh no, comma. On the dog one, good catch. Oh, y'all just like wait for me to make mistakes, eh? Cruel. Cruel. So when I go /animals now, I get my animals with their respective emoji. But I might want to be able to go animals /0 to get the first animal. Right? Notice, I go ahead and I try out this route. Does it exist? Maybe not. Okay? Express will tell me, hey, listen, I can't make animals /0. Okay? If I try animals /1, it'll say, hey, I can't find animals /1. Now, it's totally possible for me to go in and say, hey, you know what? I want app.get animals /0 should do a particular thing. Request, response. I want animals /0 to respond back with animals 0. And just hard code it. So I can go here and I can say, hey, you know what? When I get to animals /0, I got back dog. Haha. And now maybe I want the other one. When I go 1, I don't have that there. Right? Logical conclusion might be, okay, well, I'll make one for animals /1. Right? As soon as you do this, as soon as you do something like this, right, where you go like, oh, hacker, got myself 2 routes. What? This is called repeating yourself. Right? We don't want to repeat ourselves. We see a pattern. We see a pattern and we can actually have that pattern encoded and expressed. I can say, hey, this number here, this thing here, depends on this thing over here. And what express lets me do in its routes is put in placeholders. I'm going to go console log rec.params right now. Okay? Console log rec params. I'm going to restart my server. And I'm going to make a request to animals /I am an animal. Oh, whoops. I said rec params. I meant request. I just get used to writing rec all the time. So I've hard-coded it so it sends back the first animal every time. But this is going to match anything that goes /animals /something. And it's going to put it into an object called request.params. Or if you'd call this rec, it would be rec.params. And if I look at what's going on in my console now, what do I see? It's what I wrote. So whatever you wrote in the URL, what kind of thing is this? It's a string. This is a string, and then the bigger thing is an object, right? So I have an object that it says what the parameter was, right, or what that placeholder was, and what it actually points to. So since I called it animal index here, I have access to request.params.animal index. And I start this up. When I refresh this, I get I am an animal. And if I change this to anything else, 0, I get back 0. Okay. If I wanted to get that thing in here, what do I do? Request params animal index. Okay. I can use that value. Now, this is messy at this point. It's like tough for me to read. So I'll just go like var index maybe equals request params animal index so that I can write index in here. Absolutely anything. Often I might call it ID. Right? Often I might call it ID. And then I'm going to need to make sure that it's that everywhere. Right? So you can name it whatever you want. You could even have more than one. Right? So I stop this, I restart it now, and this here is dynamic. Because this depends on what this is, and this depends on what's coming through. So if I go here and I say, get me animals 0, I get the dog, but if I change it to animals 1, I get the cat. And I change it to animals 2, and I get the horse. And now, this, which really is like these two things here, we don't care about the other ones, already has almost more functionality than this thing. Right? And it's quite a bit more legible. It takes, I'm not going to lie, it takes a little while it took me a little while to get comfortable with this thing. And get comfortable with the fact that this here is a description of what the URL is going to look like. And you get to say, hey, here's a placeholder. I can use that placeholder in places. Honestly, I'm just going to change this to animal ID, just so that it's like a little bit more obvious that you can pick anything you want. Right? It doesn't have, like, they're not protected words or anything. You do whatever you want there. So I have this web page now that, depending on the URL I'm asking for, gives me back different data as JSON. Now, I want to maybe have pages instead. Right? Like, the whole point of working on websites is so that we make nice things that like look nice. So I think sending JSON back is cool, but I might want a different route. Maybe I'm gonna say animals/animal ID JSON, not JSON, HTML. Does it need to be called this? Of course not. You can call it anything you want. I'm just trying to make a different route so that I can show you how I can do the HTML stuff. So function, request, response. We're just going to go response.send and just say HTML page. What I want you to see is just that I have two different routes. They look pretty similar, but they're not the same route. And when I go animals, I get this. But if I go animals HTML, I get something else. Right? I'm actually going to flip these. I'm going to change this one to say JSON, and this one to just be like that. Just going to flip them just because this one I think is more useful to me. So I'd rather just have a shorter name. So there's no such thing as /HTML, but if I go /, I get HTML page, and I go /JSON, I get the JSON. Right? One of the questions that people run into is when you have similar routes, how do you organize them? Generally, I will put the more general ones like up myself. This is what I tend to do. Although, well, let's see. Let's see what happens if I switch these around like that. If I do this and I go animals JSON gets me that, and animals 1 gets me this. You might sometimes find, really, really rarely, that the order of the routes matters. To be honest, I can't off the top of my head even remember the rules. Chances are, though, you're not going to run into that. Right? Just organize the routes in whatever way kind of seems cleaner to you. Right? Some people like grouping all the gets and the posts and whatever just grouped up. That's cool. It doesn't actually make a difference. Right? I just like making the ones that are really similar to each other, like animals ones close to each other, and then the ones that are like / close to each other and whatever. So I could do that whole fs read file thing again. It's totally it's like a thing that I could do. like we did over here to read in the Kanye page and all that. But it's just a lot of work. Instead, since sending back HTML pages is such a common thing, Express lets me bring something in to snip into the Express server that says, hey, render a page instead of JSON. Now, I'm going to need to bring in a new tool. It's called EJS. So it feels kind of cruel that I'm dropping this on you right at the end of this lecture, but just trust, you're going to be fine. EJS lets me write HTML pages that are dynamic. So I'll be able to write a page just like I built that string earlier. This is going to be a page that has placeholders that I can put data into. So EJS stands for Embedded JavaScript. Wow, they picked horrible, like, oh man, I think they pushed like a bad update or something. The way we install it is going to be npm install EJS. So npm install EJS, and then to actually have it hooked up into Express, I'll give you this link, but basically there's this thing that says set view engine EJS, this one snippet of code. Where again, instructions will be in the notes, but I can take this and I'll do this down here. Before I start my app, like doing stuff with my app, I have to say app set the view engine to EJS. And what this means now is anytime I want, instead of sending back some text or some JSON, I can say response.render. And I can give it something like animal page. Now, I don't have an animal page made anywhere. And if I run this at the moment and I try to go to /animal/1, I get back an error that says, hey, I can't find animal page. But that's good. That's a good error. Like it's looking for something that I asked it to look for that doesn't exist. So I can go ahead and I can make the animals page where it technically, like by default, expects pages to be is in a folder called views. That's just the default configuration. So when you bring in Express, you're going to see now that I'm going to need a folder called views. And in here, I'm going to need a file called like animal page dot, and then it's EJS. I'm not going to put anything in here right now. When you don't change JavaScript stuff, like I need to restart my server every time I change the server code. But if all I've done is change EJS stuff, I don't need to restart my server. Right? There's no harm if you restart it, but just for productivity. This is my animal page right now. And that's happening because I said res render. Right, React. Response render. Right. This is, can we agree that this is a bit nicer than read file and whatever? Especially when you start seeing that on my animal page, so HTML, head, body. No, I'm not going to put a script in there, but I could if I wanted to. I might put an H1 that says animal page. And maybe in here I'll have an H2 that says dogs or dog. Right. With all kinds of stuff like what do I have in here? Emoji, description, and sound. So maybe this is like a UL with different LI elements. One that says emoji, one that says description, one that says sound, and the emoji might say that, description might say cool, and the sound might say woof. Right, I might hard code this stuff, and it's okay. Right, this is an HTML page, it's totally legal. When I refresh this thing over here, that's what I see. Animal page, dog with emoji, description, and sound. Now, I want two things right now. I want one page that shows me all of the animals. So just like when I was here, instead of showing me some JSON, I want a page that shows me all of the animals. And then I also want a page like this that dynamically shows me which animal I'm looking at. Right? We're going to do this one first, and then we're going to do all the animals. Good? So this thing here, I'm realizing that, oh, okay, well, I could call this one dogs page. I could call it dogs page, and then when I render the thing, I could say, hey, if animal, let's see, this was var animal ID equals request.params.animal ID. And I might say, oh, okay, well, if animal ID is 0, then show me the dogs page. Whoops. Show me the dogs page. Else, if animal ID equals 1, then show me the cats page. Okay, I could go through this process and set every one of these up. But what am I doing? I'm repeating myself. It's very similar to what I was doing before. So what do I do to get rid of that repetition? How did we solve the repetition before? We had like variables, we had placeholders, right? We came up with placeholders so that we had dynamic routes. So maybe I can have, a regular animals page that has placeholders in it, right? I can put placeholders in the page itself. So instead of doing this whole process, I might want to say that the animals page is going to take in some data. Right now, I'm just going to hard code that data. I'm going to hard code that data and say that let me just grab this one, that the name is going to be dog, emoji is the dog emoji, description and sound. The syntax for passing stuff in, you're just going to have to get used to it. It's the second parameter for render has to be an object. Okay, the second parameter for render has to be an object if you put it in. Generally, we'll make a variable called template vars to store that stuff. Generally, we'll just make a variable called template vars so that I don't need to write this inline like that. Right? And what happens now is that over on the other side of the page, right, over on this side, I actually get access to everything that I'd written. Such as, no, not dog, animal. What did I call it? I called it name. Such as name. Notice that the word dog is not here. But when I refresh this after restarting my server, I called it animal page. Animal page. When I restart my server, I get the word dog in here. Right? If I was to change my EJS to also say emoji, and change this thing here to say description, and this one here could say sound. When I refresh this, all of those things are dynamic. Right? Again, notice it doesn't say cool on here. It doesn't say dog or woof, but that's what shows up on the page. Right? So the thing is, EJS, lets you boost up your HTML pages. It lets you boost them up so that you can put in special tags like this. This is called an EJS tag, where an EJS tag lets you take JavaScript, take any JavaScript, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, it'll evaluate it, and then if your EJS tag has an equal sign, it will print it to the screen. Right? So 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. When I refresh this, I actually get the number 4. Right? EJS tags are made of angle bracket percent angle bracket at the end. If I don't put the equal sign, Express, like the EJS stuff is going to do the work, but it won't print it. I can write any JavaScript in here. I have access to functions, I have access to stuff. The things that I have access to, variable-wise, the variables that I have access to are the ones that you write in this object. Notice you don't have to go template vars.name. You just go name, or you just go emoji. That's it. I have put in strings at the moment. What we're going to do in a sec is turn this so that it's also going to be maybe an object or something like that. So if I don't hard code my template vars, if instead of doing this, maybe I change this to the particular animal that I'm looking at is animals with the animal ID being used. Now what I'm doing is I'm saying my template vars have a dynamic animal. Make sense? Now, my template vars don't look like they used to before. I've changed the structure. It used to be template vars had name, emoji, description, sound. Now it's going to have animal. Meaning that when I go over to this side of the thing, and I refresh, my page is going to break because it doesn't know what name is. It doesn't know what name is. It looks over at the template vars and it says, hey, there's no such thing as name in here. What there is animal. And my animal, like every animal has a name. So what I'm going to do over in here is I'm going to say animal.name. Right? Animal.emoji, animal.description, and animal.sound. When I come back and I refresh, this stuff is showing me cat now because I'm at animal ID 1. I go animal ID 2 and I get horse. Right? So we've started building these incredibly dynamic pages. Right? Imagine Wikipedia. Right? Wikipedia has the same structure on every article, but all it is it's changing around the text. You can build Wikipedia now. Right? Like you could do it. You'd put the data somewhere, and then you display it when you go to different articles. Now, it being 11:01, are y'all okay if I take like 3 more minutes to show you one more thing? So I'm going to show you 2 more things, kind of quickly. One of them is the fact that I want to show all of the animals. I'm going to go to my /animals page, and instead of sending JSON back, I'm going to response, and I'll speed this up a little bit, but I'm going to response render maybe the entire animals page, like all the animals. I'm going to send it as the template vars. I'm going to give it var template vars equals animals and give it all of the animals. In my views, just like how there used to be an animal page only, now I'm going to have an animals page. And what I want to do in here is maybe like loop over animals. Right? Maybe I want a UL that says something to the tune of dog, and then cat and horse. I want something like this. That's all it should say. I'm gonna restart my server right now, and I go to the animals page. I get dog, cat, horse because I hard coded that. But I know that I have that data. I know that that data is actually in the template vars. So over on the animals page, if I went, I'm gonna just do an H2. If I did EJS animals, and I refreshed, what do I get? I get 3 of them because there's 3 animals. Object, object, object. If I have an array of stuff and I want to display each one of these things dynamically, what kind of programming like construct would I use? I might use a for loop or a for each or something, right? I'm going to do this with a for loop right now. For var I equals 0, well, I is less than animals.length. And you can write this any way you want, I++. I'm just choosing this right now. On every line of JavaScript that I'm writing in my EJS here, I put the EJS tags at the beginning and at the end of them. And what I actually get now is, if I move dog up into here, for example, I'm going to get dog UL. I'm going to get dog printed out multiple times. Dog, dog, dog. Right, let me get rid of this one. Dog, dog, dog. Now, if I have access to animals and I have access to an index, what do I want to write in here instead? So, like, loudly though, because I can't hear you. Animals.I? Square brackets I, because animals is an array. Is there anything else I need to do this right now? I need to do the EJS stuff. Right, and then you said something there too. What was it? Dot name, because I want the name of that particular animal. I'm just going to remove dot name for a second just to show you what error you, like, what thing you would get. When you're working on TinyApp and you get object object, that means you haven't gone deep enough into the object. Dog, cat, horse. Right? Dynamic. Super cool. And so, dog, cat, horse, anything I want, I can put in there now, like any of my values. This thing happens dynamically. Notice the difference between this one is %equal and this one is just %. Because if I put an equal in here and I refresh, it's going to get confused because it doesn't know how to display a for loop on the page. Right? Whereas here, it knows how to display a string on the page. Right? So, that being said, what we've done right now is we've gone through a whole bunch of stuff, talking about how servers are things that listen and respond. Right? We've built up a server with the HTTP module, right, which was garbage. This was hot trash. And then we built up a beautiful Express project that has all kinds of views, all kinds of dynamic routes. Right? I know there's a bunch of stuff in here, right? But just take some time to dig through it. Maybe start your, like, I know you have to do TinyApp, but like maybe play around with a tutorial or two if you still don't feel ready when you're starting TinyApp, right? I want you to just kind of feel comfortable with these parameters and stuff like that. What we've done, I'm going to use a word and not talk about it too much. What we've done is we've used a concept called middleware. Middleware is a word in Express that means anything that happens in between a request and the response going out. Right? So we can register all kinds of things to happen in between. Here's one of them. In between the request and the response, make sure that there's a view engine. Make sure that there's a view engine so that when we say render, it'll send out HTML stuff. Express is like a pipeline, and we slotted that in. Here's another piece of middleware. Express is a pipeline where a request comes through, and we've said, if that request is a post, do this thing. Right? It's something we slotted into the middle. You're going to explore more middleware over the course of the week. Right? And middleware is going to act like plugins to boost up your application a bit. Right? I don't want to go deeper into that right now, but I just want you to know about that idea. Just having heard the word middleware. Sound good? Okay, so sorry, the lecture went a little bit long, but I really wanted to make sure that we got to see that last example. You are going to be looping over stuff in TinyApp today, but you're not looping over an array. You're looping over an object. Right? Get ready to just Google stuff. Right? Because there isn't going to be information on how to do that in the assignment. Okay? Again, I know this was a lot. It's just going to take a while to sink in. There questions? I'm going to share this immediately, yeah. I'm going to put this up on GitHub, take your time through it, and call me or a mentor to like run through it anytime. Right? I'll also put the recording up so you can watch it. It'll be ready in like 5 minutes. Good stuff? All right. Thanks, everyone.